Welcome to Breakup Cheater, where real stories meet raw emotion. Every episode takes you inside moments that change lives forever, from shocking betrayals to heartbreaking revelations. These aren't just stories. They're lessons, warnings, and reminders that sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. I thought my husband would never leave me. I was wrong. One night, in front of all our friends and neighbors, I mocked him for the very last time. And instead of laughing it off like he always did, he stood up, looked me in the eye, and told me it was over, forever. I didn't know it then, but that moment would destroy my marriage, my friendships, and the life I thought I had under control. We laughed at my husband in front of everyone, until he ended our marriage on the spot. My name is Hannah, I'm 24 years old, and I've been married to Ethan, 26, for just over 3 years. We met in college, and for the longest time I thought we were the perfect couple. He was steady, loyal, and endlessly patient. I was outgoing, social, and always chasing excitement. Looking back, I can see exactly where it all started to unravel. But at the time I didn't notice, or maybe I just didn't care. The dynamic. Ethan is a classic introvert. He loves quiet nights with a good book or a movie, while I've always thrived in the center of a crowded room. Parties, gatherings, dinners with friends, that's where I feel alive. From the moment we started dating, Ethan encouraged me to enjoy my social life, even if it wasn't his thing. He never complained when I stayed out late or spent weekends with friends. But the more he gave me space, the more I started to take him and his kindness for granted. Ethan was the sort of man who would cancel his own plans if I felt down, wake up early to bring me coffee, and rearrange his whole schedule if I needed him. He carried the relationship like it was his personal responsibility to keep it afloat. And I stopped noticing how much effort that took. Taking him for granted. At some point, I convinced myself I wanted to be a stay-at-home wife, even though we didn't have kids. Ethan didn't hesitate. He agreed instantly, saying he wanted me to be happy. But instead of using that time to make our home a warm and welcoming place, I got lazy. He'd come home after long hours at work to dirty dishes, laundry piled up, and no dinner on the table. He never complained. He just rolled up his sleeves and took care of it. Instead of appreciating that, I began to see him as too nice. I wanted a man who would challenge me, not someone who would bend over backward just to keep the peace. That twisted thinking led me to seek validation elsewhere, in the form of nights out, flirting, and surrounding myself with friends who told me I could do better. The mockery begins. One Friday night, my friend Tessa invited me out for drinks. Ethan, as usual, gave me spending money and told me to enjoy myself. A few cocktails in, the conversation turned to relationships, and I, drunk on both alcohol and attention, started telling stories about how Ethan let me do whatever I wanted, how he never said no, how I could probably tell him to jump off a bridge and he'd ask how far. Everyone laughed. Felt powerful. The next morning, Ethan made me breakfast. He asked how my night was, and I gave vague answers. I saw the concern in his eyes, but he didn't push. Instead, he kissed my forehead and told me he loved me. That should have been a wake-up call. Instead, it fueled my resentment. A few weeks later, we were invited to a neighborhood barbecue. It was sunny, warm, and full of laughter. Ethan was his usual self, grilling, making sure everyone had food, staying in the background. Then, the conversation at my table drifted to how much our partners do for us. Someone joked about Ethan being the perfect servant husband, and I leaned in, laughing, making more jokes at his expense. People chuckled and I soaked it up. Ethan was standing close enough to hear. I noticed him go quiet, but I didn't stop. That night, he barely spoke to me. I told myself it would blow over like always. I was wrong. The breaking point. The final blow came at a neighborhood party about a week later. Drinks were flowing, music was playing, and once again my friends and I ended up talking about our relationships. Naturally, Ethan became the topic. Someone joked that I must have Ethan on a leash. I laughed, adding my own digs, about how he never refused me, how he lacked a backbone. The table roared with laughter. Then the laughter stopped. I looked up to see Ethan standing there, pale but calm. He set down the tray he'd been carrying, looked straight at me and said, "We need to talk." We stepped aside, and with everyone watching, Ethan said the words I never thought I'd hear. "I'm done. You've disrespected me for the last time. I'm leaving you." He told me my things would be on the porch when I got home. Then he walked out of the party without looking back. When I got home, Ethan was already packing my belongings. I cried, begged, and promised to change, but it was like talking to a stranger. His face was unreadable. His voice was steady. When I refused to leave, he said he'd call the police. That's when I knew he meant it. I left with what I could carry. My so-called friends didn't help me, they just stood there, watching. By the end of the night, I was sitting in a park, calling my dad for a ride. Life without him. I've been living with my parents ever since. Ethan won't answer my calls or messages. Tessa and the rest of my friends vanished. The divorce was quick. The house was his before the marriage, so I got nothing but a small amount of alimony. I found a low-paying job my dad helped me get. I hate it, but it's all I've got. I heard through a neighbor that those same friends who used to mock him with me are now trying to date him. He's not interested, which honestly makes me proud of him, even if I'm no longer part of his life. Reflection. Therapy has forced me to face some ugly truths about myself. I disrespected a man who truly loved me. I mistook kindness for weakness. And I let the validation from others blind me to the harm I was causing. Ethan is happier without me. That's the part that stings the most. I can't undo what I did, but I can try to make sure I never become that person again. This really is my last update. I'm focusing on saving money, moving out of my parents' house, and rebuilding from scratch. To anyone reading this, don't take unconditional love for granted. You might think they'll never leave, until the day they finally do. In the end, I lost the one person who truly loved me, not because he stopped caring but because I pushed him too far. I traded respect for attention, and now I'm left with nothing but regret. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: kindness is not weakness, and love will not survive without respect. Cherish the people who stand by you, before they decide to stand up and walk away. You've just heard another story that proves life can change in a single moment. If you felt the weight of this journey, make sure to subscribe and join us for more tales of love, loss, and the choices that define us. Until next time, hold on to what matters and never forget, every ending is the start of a new chapter.